The big alien ship came down from space like thunder. The whole moon base shook when it landed. Commander Kim walked toward the meeting room. His boots made loud sounds on the metal floor. Today was supposed to be easy. Just trade prisoners between humans and the space aliens. The aliens caught 3 human soldiers and Earth had 2 alien fighters. Lee sat in the corner watching everything. He was a U.S. Marine. The toughest kind of human soldier. His uniform looked clean, but his hands had scars. From many fights, the alien prisoners looked very different from humans. They were tall with blue skin. Each one had 4 arms instead of 2. They acted like they were better than everyone else. The alien boss was called Vorth. He was over 8 feet tall. His skin had scales that changed colors when he moved. His voice sounded scary through the talking machine. "I only do this trade because we need our fighters back. Your people are weak compared to us." Park was another human officer. He worked on making peace between humans and aliens for many years. He did not want another war, but the room felt tense. The alien prisoners made clicking sounds with their mouths. The talking machine said they were saying bad things about human strength. Lee did not talk, but his face looked angry. He had seen these aliens fight before. They were strong and fast. Their weapons could burn through human armor like it was paper. But Lee knew something. The aliens did not know. Humans had something special. That was not about being big or strong. It was about never giving up no matter how bad things got. The meeting room had white walls and bright lights. There were chairs around a big table. The air felt heavy like before a storm. Everyone could feel that something bad might happen. The alien prisoners kept looking at the human soldiers like they wanted to fight. Commander Kim tried to keep things calm. He had done prisoner exchanges before, but never with aliens. This angry, the Galactic Alliance, was supposed to be at peace with Earth, but these soldiers did not act peaceful. They acted like they hated all humans. Lee watched the aliens move and talk. He was thinking about how they fought. He remembered battles where these blue-skinned warriors had killed many human soldiers. But he also remembered that humans always found ways to win even when things looked hopeless. The alien called Thak was the biggest of the prisoners. He had muscles like a machine and scars all over his blue skin. His 4 arms looked like they could break a human in half. He kept staring at Lee like he wanted to hurt him. Park tried to make small talk with Vorth, but the big alien did not seem interested in being friendly. He just wanted to get his soldiers back and leave. This made Park worried because unfriendly aliens usually meant trouble later. The human prisoners that the aliens brought back looked tired and hurt, but they were alive. Lee felt angry seeing his fellow soldiers treated badly, but he kept his face calm. Marines were taught to control their emotions until it was time to use them. Commander Kim started the official exchange. He read from papers that said which prisoners would go where. Everything seemed to be going normal until Thak decided he wanted to cause problems. The big alien looked around the room like he owned it. Lee could feel trouble coming. He had been in enough fights to know when someone was getting ready to start something bad. His muscles got ready, even though he looked relaxed on the outside. This was how Marines stayed alive, by always being ready. The other human officers did not see the danger coming. They were thinking about paperwork and making sure everything was legal. But Lee was thinking like a warrior. He was watching Thak. The way a hunter watches a dangerous animal, Vorth seemed to notice the tension too. His scales turned orange, which meant he was interested in what might happen. The alien boss was not trying to stop trouble. He was waiting to see what would happen. This made Lee even more alert. The room got quieter. Everyone could feel something was about to happen. The alien prisoners were all looking at Thak, waiting to see what he would do. The human soldiers were getting nervous, but they did not know why. Commander Kim kept reading the exchange papers, but his voice sounded worried. He could feel the mood in the room changing. Park stopped trying to make conversation and moved closer to the other human officers just in case. Lee stayed in his chair, but every muscle in his body was ready to move. He had faced aliens in battle before, but never in a small room like this. If fighting started here, it would be fast and brutal with nowhere to run. The air conditioning made the only sound for a moment. Then Thak started to smile. It was not a nice smile, it was the kind of smile that meant someone was about to get hurt. Lee had seen that smile before on the faces of enemies, right before battles started. Everything was about to change. The peaceful prisoner exchange was about to become something much more dangerous. And Lee knew that whatever happened next would not be good for anyone in that room. The aliens thought they knew how tough humans were, but they were about to learn they were very, very wrong. The prisoner exchange was going fine until Thak decided to test the humans. He looked at Lee with all four of his yellow eyes and started laughing. The sound was terrible, like metal being scraped with rocks. The talking machine made his words clear. "And mean you think you are tough little human," Beck said, moving his four big arms. "I have killed hundreds of your kind," they all screamed and cried before they died. "When I get free, I will come for you. I will tear you apart piece by piece. You will beg me to kill you fast." The room went completely quiet. Even the other aliens looked surprised that Thak said such things. Commander Kim stepped forward, ready to end the meeting before things got worse. But Lee raised his hand, asking to speak. His voice was calm and steady, which made his words sound even more scary. "You know what is funny about that threat?" Lee said, looking right into Thak's eyes. "You think killing is about size and strength. You think it is about having 4 arms instead of 2 or being bigger and scarier looking. But you are wrong about something important." Thak leaned forward, interested despite himself. The other aliens were listening too, wondering what this small human could say that would matter. Lee continued, his voice never changing from that deadly calm sound. "Killing is not about being the biggest or the strongest. It is about being willing to do whatever it takes to protect what matters to you. And human Marines. We have been doing that longer and better than any species in this galaxy. We have been fighting wars since before your people even discovered fire." The alien talking machine seemed to have trouble with Lee's next words, but finally managed to change them. "If you really want to find out what a human Marine can do when someone threatens him, I will be happy to show you. But I should warn you, it will not take very long." That got very angry. His blue skin turned bright red, which meant he was mad or excited. Maybe both. He stood up from his chair with all 4 arms spread wide to show how big he was. The other aliens made clicking sounds, but this time they seemed to be cheering him on instead of making fun of humans. Commander Kim knew this was getting dangerous. He had seen fights start over smaller things than this. But before he could stop it, Vorth, the alien boss, held up one of his clawed hands. He seemed interested in what was happening. Park looked worried. He knew that fighting during a peace meeting was the worst thing that could happen. But he also knew Lee well enough to see something dangerous in the Marine's eyes. There was cold, thinking there, like a hunting animal, sizing up its prey. The tension in the room was so thick you could almost touch it. The human prisoners, who had just been returned, were watching with wide eyes. They had seen what these aliens could do in battle, but they had never seen Lee get ready to fight. Thak puffed out his chest and flexed all 4 arms. His muscles looked like they could crush steel beams. He had trained in fighting styles from all over the galaxy. His people were naturally stronger and faster than humans. He thought this would be over in seconds. Lee stayed sitting in his chair, but something about him changed. He looked smaller than the alien, but there was something in his eyes that made everyone pay attention. It was like looking at a sleeping tiger that might wake up at any moment. The other alien prisoners were getting excited. They had heard stories about how weak humans were supposed to be. Now they would get to see one of their best warriors crush a human Marine in front of everyone. It would be a good story to tell when they got home. But Park was not excited. He had worked with Lee before, and he knew the Marine was much more dangerous than he looked. Lee had fought in battles that would make most people have nightmares. He had survived things that would kill normal soldiers. Commander Kim tried one more time to stop what was happening. "Gentlemen, this is not the place for personal disputes. We are here to exchange prisoners and maintain peace between our peoples." But Vorth seemed to want the fight to happen. "Perhaps this could be educational for both our species. A demonstration of our fighting abilities," he said. His scales turned green, which meant he was curious. Lee finally stood up slowly. He was not nearly as tall as Thak, and he only had 2 arms compared to the aliens' 4. But when he moved, everyone in the room felt the change. It was Like the air itself got more dangerous. The human officers all stepped back without thinking about it. They could feel that Lee had switched from diplomat mode to warrior mode. It was something that happened to all Marines when they got ready to fight. Everything about them became focused on winning. Thack laughed again, that horrible scraping sound. "This will be the shortest fight in galactic history," he said. "I accept your challenge, little human. Try to die with some dignity." Lee did not laugh or smile. He just nodded once. That was all the agreement anyone needed. The peaceful prisoner exchange had just turned into something much more dangerous, and everyone in the room knew that what happened next would change how aliens thought about humans forever. The air in the room felt electric, like before a lightning storm. Everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen when an alien super warrior fought a human Marine. Nobody knew it yet, but they were about to witness something that would be talked about for years to come. Thack's scales turned bright red, which meant he was very angry or very excited. Maybe both. He stood up from his chair with all four arms spread wide to show his size. The other aliens made clicking sounds again, but this time they seemed to be encouraging him rather than making fun of the humans. "You dare challenge a warrior of the Galactic Alliance?" Thack roared. "I have trained for 300 of your Earth years. I have conquered 12 different worlds. I have never been defeated in single combat. Not once." Commander Kim tried to stop what was happening, but Vorth, the alien representative, seemed very interested in the fight. He raised one of his clawed hands for silence. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "this could be educational for both our species. A demonstration of our fighting abilities." Park looked very worried. He knew that starting a fight during a diplomatic meeting was exactly the wrong thing to do. But he also knew Lee, and he could see something in the Marine's eyes that made him think twice about stopping it. There was cold calculation there, like a predator sizing up its prey. "Fine," Lee said, standing up slowly. He was not nearly as tall as Thack, and he only had 2 arms compared to the alien's 4. But something about the way he moved made everyone in the room pay attention. "But let's make this interesting. Your boy here thinks he is going to kill me when he gets free anyway. So let's settle this now. What are you proposing?" Vorth asked, his scales shifting to a curious green. Lee smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. "Single combat. No weapons, just hand-to-hand fighting. When your warrior loses, he keeps his mouth shut for the rest of this exchange. When I lose..." He paused, letting the silence stretch out. "Well, I guess you will not have to worry about me anymore." Thack laughed again, that horrible scraping sound. "This will be the shortest fight in galactic history. I accept your challenge, little human. Try to die with some dignity." The meeting room was quickly cleared of furniture to make space for the fight. The other alien prisoners were allowed to watch along with the human officers. Everyone knew this was not just about 2 soldiers settling a disagreement. This was about which species was really stronger. Commander Kim spoke into his radio, calling for medical teams to stand by. He did not know who would need help, but he was sure someone would get hurt badly. Park tried one more time to talk Lee out of fighting, but the Marine just shook his head. The human prisoners who had been returned by the aliens whispered to each other. They had seen Thack fight before during their capture. He had killed 3 human soldiers with his bare hands in less than a minute. They were afraid their rescuer was about to die. Lee took off his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. Underneath his uniform, his arms showed the results of years of hard training, but he still looked small compared to his opponent. What nobody else could see was the way his mind was working, analyzing Thack's stance, his movement patterns, looking for weaknesses. Thack stretched his forearms, showing off muscles that looked like they could crush steel. He had been trained in fighting styles from across the galaxy. His people were naturally 3 times stronger than humans and twice as fast. He expected this to be over in seconds. The aliens were all making excited clicking sounds. They had never seen a human fight one of their warriors before. They expected to see their champion tear the small human apart. It would prove once and for all that aliens were superior to these weak Earth creatures. But the human officers looked grim. They knew Lee was tough, but they also knew how strong these aliens were. They had seen the damage Thack could do. They were preparing to watch their friend die, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Vorth watched with great interest. His scales kept changing colors as different emotions went through him. He was curious to see what would happen, but he was also confident his warrior would win easily. Humans were known throughout the galaxy for being small and weak. Lee walked to the center of the cleared space. His boots made no sound on the metal floor. He moved like water smooth, and controlled every step was planned, every movement had purpose. The way he walked made some of the aliens stop clicking and start paying closer attention. Last chance to back down, human, Thak said, settling into a fighting position that used all forearms for both attack and defense. I might let you live if you apologize. Now Lee did not answer. He just moved into his own fighting stance, one that looked simple but was actually the result of decades of study and practice. Marine hand-to-hand. Combat training was not just about being strong. It was about being efficient, deadly, and completely ruthless when necessary. The room fell completely silent. Everyone was holding their breath. The two fighters faced each other across the small space, the alien towering over the human like a giant over a child. But there was something about Lee that made the smart people in the room start to wonder if size was everything. Commander Kim looked at his watch. The fight had not even started yet, but he was already thinking about the reports he would have to write. How do you explain to your superiors that a diplomatic meeting turned into a death match? The tension was so thick it felt like the air itself might explode. Thak was confident, and angry Lee was calm and focused. The difference between them was more than just size. It was the difference between someone who fought to prove how tough he was and someone who fought to win no matter what. In a few seconds, everyone in that room would learn something important about humans. Something the galaxy had not understood before. Something that would change how aliens thought about Earth forever. The fight was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same. The fight started when Thak rushed forward with all four arms moving in a complex pattern designed to overwhelm his opponent. His people had developed this fighting style over thousands of years, and it had never failed against a two-armed opponent, but Lee was not where Thak expected him to be. The Marine had moved just enough to avoid the main attack, and suddenly he was inside Thak's guard, where those four long arms became more of a problem than an advantage. Lee's elbow connected with Thak's throat, just hard enough to make him gasp and step back. That's when Lee said quietly. The watching aliens stopped making their clicking sounds. They had expected to see their warrior crush the human in the first few seconds. Instead, they saw something they had never seen before. Someone had actually hurt Thak in a fight. What happened next would be talked about in both human and alien military schools for years to come. Thak, surprised by the speed of Lee's counterattack, tried to use his reach advantage to keep the human at a distance. But Lee seemed to know exactly where every attack was coming from. The alien threw a combination with his upper arms, while his lower arms tried to grab Lee's legs. Lee ducked under the punches, grabbed one of the lower arms, and used Thak's own momentum to throw him across the room. The big alien crashed into the wall hard enough to dent the metal. That's two, Lee said, still in that same calm voice. Thak got up, his scales now bright orange with rage and embarrassment. He had never been thrown by anyone, especially not someone half his size. This time, he was more careful, moving in slowly and trying to corner Lee against the wall. But Lee did not wait to be cornered. He moved forward instead of back, getting inside Thak's guard again. This time his knee found the alien's solar plexus, folding him over. Before Thak could recover, Lee's hands found pressure points on the alien's neck that sent him to the ground. Gasping for air, 3 and 4, Lee counted the watching aliens were making distressed clicking sounds. This was not going the way anyone expected. Thak was supposed to be one of their best fighters, and he was being taken apart by a human who looked like he was barely trying. Commander Kim watched in amazement. He had known Lee was a good fighter, but he had never seen anything like this. The Marine was fighting like a machine, calculating and precise. Every move had a purpose, and every purpose was to cause maximum damage. Thak managed to get back on his feet, but now he was desperate. He charged again, this time with no technique at all, just pure fury and strength. Lee sidestepped, grabbed the alien's arm, and used a joint lock that sent Thak face first into the floor 5. Lee said, "You want me to keep counting, or are you ready to shut up now?" But Thak was not ready to give up. He swept his legs, trying to knock Lee down. When that did not work, he grabbed for the human's throat with 2 hands, while his other arms tried to pummel Lee's body. For a moment, it looked like his size and strength might finally matter. The alien prisoners started making hopeful clicking sounds. Maybe their champion was finally going to turn this fight around. Maybe the human had just been lucky so far, and now the real fighting would begin. Then Lee did something that made even the human officers gasp. He grabbed Thak's wrists, twisted them in a way that made the alien scream, and used the leverage to flip the much larger opponent over his shoulder. Thak hit the ground so hard that the metal floor cracked. 6 through 10, Lee said, still want to keep going. Park could not believe what he was seeing. Lee was not just winning. He was completely dominating an opponent that should have been able to kill him easily. The Marine moved like water, flowing around attacks and striking back with deadly precision. Vorth watched with his scales turning colors he had never shown before. He was confused and amazed at the same time. How was this small human defeating their best warrior? So easily it went against everything they knew about the difference between their species. The human prisoners were cheering quietly. They had been afraid Lee was going to die, but now they were seeing something incredible. Their rescuer was proving that humans were much tougher than anyone had thought. Thak tried to get up again, but his body was not working right. Lee had hit pressure points and joints in ways that made movement difficult and painful. The alien warrior who had bragged about killing hundreds of humans could barely stand up. Lee stepped back and waited. He was not even breathing hard. The fight that was supposed to prove human weakness was instead showing that humans were much more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The Marine looked like he could keep fighting all day. The room was completely quiet except for Thak's heavy breathing. Everyone was staring at Lee with new understanding. This was not just a lucky human who had gotten in a few good hits. This was a trained killer who had been holding back his whole life, waiting for someone to give him a reason to show what he could really do. Commander Kim realized that everything had changed. The aliens would never think of humans the same way again. Word of this fight would spread through their military, and their government Earth had just announced to the galaxy that it was not weak anymore. The fight was almost over, but the lesson was just beginning. Thak lay on the cracked floor, breathing heavily but not seriously injured. Lee had been careful to hurt him without causing permanent damage, a level of control that impressed even the alien observers. The fight had lasted exactly 1 minute and 12 seconds, but it felt like much longer to everyone watching. The challenge is over, Commander Kim announced. Let's continue with the prisoner exchange. But Vorth held up a clawed hand. His scales had turned to a deep purple color that the humans had never seen before. Through the translator, his voice sounded different, more respectful than it had been all day. Wait, he said, I must ask. Is this normal for human warriors? Lee helped Thak to his feet, showing the same respect he would give to any defeated opponent. Every Marine learns to fight, he said simply. It's part of our training. We are taught to win quickly and efficiently using whatever advantages we have. But you are so much smaller than us. One of the other alien prisoners said, How is this possible? Park stepped forward, seeing an opportunity to maybe prevent future conflicts. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years, he explained. We have learned that size and strength are not everything. Strategy, training, and determination often matter more. That finally managed to speak, his voice hoarse from Lee's throat strikes. I was wrong to threaten you, he admitted. I thought humans were weak because you are small, but I have never been defeated so completely by anyone. Lee nodded, accepting the apology. Your people are strong and fast, he said. But strength without discipline is just violence. Marines are taught to be weapons, not just fighters. There is a difference. The other aliens were all looking at Lee with new eyes. They had come to this meeting thinking humans were weak creatures that got lucky in space battles. Now they realized they had been very wrong about what humans could do. Commander Kim felt relieved that the situation had not turned into a bigger fight, but he also realized that this single combat had probably done more for human reputation than years of diplomacy. The aliens would remember this, and they would tell others. The prisoner exchange continued without any more problems, but the mood in the room had completely changed. The aliens were quiet and respectful. The humans stood a little taller, knowing they had just proven something important about their species. Fourth approached Lee as they were preparing to leave, his scales still that respectful purple color. "I will make sure my government knows about this," he said. "Perhaps we have been underestimating your species." Lee watched the alien ship disappear into space, then turned to Commander Kim. "Think that will prevent some problems?" Down the road, Kim smiled. "Maybe. But I have a feeling word is going to spread pretty quickly through their military. What you just did might save more lives than any peace treaty," as they walked back to the human section of the base. Park could not help but ask the question everyone was thinking. "Lee, how did you know you could take him down that easily?" Lee was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain something that seemed obvious to him. It was not about being stronger or faster, he finally said. It was about being willing to do whatever it took to win. That alien was fighting to prove how tough he was. I was fighting like my life depended on it. When you are a Marine, that is always how you fight. The story spread quickly through both human and alien military networks. Soon Galactic Alliance soldiers were being warned about underestimating human Marines. The phrase "Earth-trained" became something aliens said with respect rather than mockery. Back on Earth, military leaders were getting reports about what had happened on the moon base. They started to understand that their soldiers had a reputation in space that they had not known about. Humans were becoming known as small, but extremely dangerous. The aliens went back to their worlds with a new understanding of what humans could do. They spent weeks telling other warriors about his fight with Lee. The story got bigger each time it was told, but the basic message was always the same. Do not underestimate humans. Other species in the galaxy started hearing the stories too. The small creatures from Earth who had seemed so weak were actually trained killers who could defeat much larger opponents. Trade agreements and treaties were renegotiated with this new understanding. Lee went back to his regular duties, ready for the next challenge that came his way. He did not know that his 1-minute fight had changed how an entire galaxy thought about his species. He just knew he had done his job as a Marine, protecting other humans. The moon base returned to normal operations, but everyone who had been in that room carried the memory of what they had seen. A single human Marine had defeated an alien super warrior without weapons or armor. Just training skill and the will to never give up. Years later, when humans and aliens worked together in space, the aliens always showed respect for human soldiers. They had learned that size did not matter as much as heart, and humans had more heart than any species in the galaxy. The news of the fight spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within days, every major alien military base had heard the story of how a human Marine defeated one of the Galactic Alliance's best warriors in single combat. The details changed with each telling, but the core message remained the same. Humans were much more dangerous than anyone had realized. On the alien homeworld, military commanders gathered to discuss what this meant for their understanding of Earth. 300 years of training and TAC was defeated in just over a minute. One general said, shaking his forearms in disbelief, "How is this possible?" The answer came from their own intelligence reports. Humans have been fighting each other for their entire history. Every generation has produced warriors who learned from the battles of those who came before them. They do not just train for war, they live for it. Back on Earth, Lee returned to his base and tried to go back to normal duty. But normal was no longer. Possible news crews wanted interviews. Military scientists wanted to study his techniques. Politicians wanted to use his story to show how strong Earth had become. "I just did my job," Lee told his commanding officer when asked about all the attention. "A Marine protects other Marines. That alien threatened to kill me, so I showed him why that was a bad idea." But the impact of his actions went far beyond one fight. Trade negotiations that had been stalled for months suddenly moved forward. Alien pirates who had been attacking human ships started avoiding Earth vessels. Military alliances that had seemed impossible became reality overnight. Commander Kim found himself promoted and put in charge of a new program training human soldiers for alien contact. The fight had shown that humans needed to be ready for more encounters like this one. "We cannot rely on luck," he told his superiors. "We need every soldier to be as ready as Lee was." Park was transferred to the diplomatic corps where His experience with the prisoner exchange made him valuable. His first report to the State Department was simple. The aliens respect strength more than kindness. We need to remember that in all future negotiations, the alien prisoners who had witnessed the fight went home with stories that spread through their entire society. Humans do not look dangerous. One of them told a gathering of young warriors, but they are the most dangerous creatures I have ever seen. Do not judge them by their size. Thak himself became something of a celebrity in alien military circles. He gave lectures about human fighting techniques and warned other warriors about underestimating Earth soldiers. I thought I knew everything about combat, he would tell audiences, but that human taught me that technique matters more than strength. The Galactic Alliance military began studying human fighting methods. They were amazed to discover that Earth warriors trained not just their bodies but their minds. They learned to think several moves ahead to use an opponent's strength against them, to find weakness in any enemy. New protocols were established for dealing with human military personnel. Alien soldiers were warned that humans might look small and weak, but they were actually highly trained killers who should be treated with extreme caution. The old jokes about human weakness disappeared from alien barracks. Vorth returned to his position as a diplomatic representative, but with a new understanding of the species he was dealing with. He recommended that the Galactic Alliance offer Earth full membership in their organization, something that had been considered impossible before the fight. The prisoner exchange program continued, but with new rules. No more threats were allowed during negotiations. Alien prisoners were warned that disrespecting human soldiers would result in immediate punishment. Security was increased at all meetings to prevent future incidents. Lee finally got the peace and quiet he wanted when he was assigned to a training position teaching new Marines how to fight aliens. His classes were always full, and his students were among the most feared human soldiers in space. His simple philosophy was passed on to thousands of new warriors. When you fight to win, he would tell each new class. Size does not matter. Speed does not matter. What matters is being willing to do whatever it takes to protect the people who depend on you. That is what makes a Marine. The story of the fight became part of human military legend. Every Marine knew about Lee and what he had accomplished in that meeting room. New recruits were told the story during basic training as an example of what one determined human could achieve. Alien species throughout the galaxy began requesting human military advisors for their own armies. They wanted to learn the techniques that had made such small creatures so effective in combat. Human fighting instructors became some of the most sought-after teachers in space. Years passed and the galaxy settled into a new understanding. Humans were still small compared to most alien species, but they were no longer considered weak. Earth became known as a place that produced the finest warriors in the galaxy. Despite their physical limitations, Lee eventually retired from active duty, but remained on call as a consultant for alien relations. He lived quietly on a small farm, but his phone never stopped ringing with requests for advice from military leaders across the galaxy. The moon base where the fight had taken place became a pilgrimage site for young human soldiers. They would visit the room where Lee had changed galactic history and promised to uphold the reputation he had created for their species. And somewhere in space, alien mothers told their children bedtime stories about the small creatures from Earth, who proved that the size of the warrior mattered less than the size of their heart. The humans had earned their place among the stars not through conquest but through the simple act of refusing to back down when threatened. The lesson was learned and it would never be forgotten throughout the galaxy. Humans were small, but they were warriors born and bred. Never again would anyone make the mistake of thinking that Earth was weak. The price of that lesson had been paid in a single minute of violence that echoed across the stars forever.